Welcome to English Alien. Here are some ways to practice. We have reading comprehension. There will be questions about the chapter at the end and in the description box below the video. Answer the questions in the comment section. Listening comprehension. You can close your eyes and listen to me read the story, then answer the questions in the comment section. Pronunciation. You can pause the video, read the words out loud with your voice, then play the video and listen to compare your pronunciation with mine. Chapter 4 Vocabulary. Pause the video, review the definitions. We will go over them after the chapter. The Force in the Forest by English Alien. Chapter 4. The guide began to feel his consciousness drawing closer to his body, as if his awareness was collecting itself from afar and gradually approaching. As his consciousness drew nearer, the guide started to experience a deep understanding of the forest, as if he could feel every leaf on the ground, every buzzing insect passing by his head, and every sound filtering through the density of the vegetation. It was as if he had lived in the forest his whole life and knew it like his own home. Finally, his consciousness came close enough, and the guide's awareness settled into his body. He opened his eyes and looked around, feeling awake, strong, and attuned to the natural world surrounding him. With confidence and determination, the guide embarked on the journey back to his village. Despite the temptation to stay in the forest and explore his newfound abilities, he knew he had to warn his village of the danger lurking in the woods. As he walked, his mind filled with thoughts on how to handle the situation and protect his community. Gradually, he approached the edge of the forest where his village was located and prepared to face the challenges that awaited him there. The guide stood in silence at the village's edge, his gaze lost in the horizon. He didn't know who to turn to, whom to trust with his story. Who would believe him? How could he explain what had happened? His thoughts grew darker, and he began to consider the idea of simply disappearing into the forest, leaving everything behind and never facing anyone again. However, something inside him told him he couldn't do that. He knew he had to warn the people of the danger, no matter how improbable his story seemed. After all, he had witnessed the horrors that had occurred in the forest firsthand. With steady steps, he entered the village, searching for someone who would listen and understand. The guide noticed that the sounds and smells of the village were very different from those of the forest. In the forest, there was a natural tranquility, only interrupted by the sounds of wildlife. But here, in the village, noise was constant. People talking, animals mooing, and tools hammering. The smells were different too. In the forest the air was fresh and clean, filled with the scents of plants and earth. But in the village the air was saturated with strong smells, like chimney smoke, garbage, and the odor of domesticated animals. Although he had lived in the village for a long time, the guide was starting to prefer the atmosphere of the forest. As he walked down the main street, the guide noticed that some of the people recognized him and looked at him with fear, while others glanced at him with confusion. He wondered if they had already heard about the missing tourists, or if his own disheveled appearance, torn clothes, and wild look made them uncomfortable. Finally, he stopped at the market square, where some villagers were busy selling their products. He took a deep breath before approaching a group of people, trying to appear calm and respectful. "Good morning, friends," he greeted them with a forced smile. "I need to speak with someone from the village council. Are any council members here in the market?" The people paused to look at him, appearing uncertain about what to do. The guide felt his heart beating faster, knowing he would have to tell the story of the missing tourists and the danger in the forest. "Alejandro!" The guide heard a familiar voice in the distance calling a familiar name. He turned to see that it was his friend Oscar. Oscar hurried to meet him with panic in his voice and a worried expression on his face. Without wasting time on pleasantries, said, "The police are looking for you and suspect you are responsible for some missing tourists." Chapter 4 Vocabulary Review. To draw. To become nearer in space or time. Afar. From or at a great distance. The guide began to feel his consciousness drawing closer to his body, as if his awareness was collecting itself from afar and gradually approaching. To settle. To reach and remain at a certain level or in a certain state. Finally, his consciousness became close enough and the guide's awareness settled into his body. To embark. To make a start. With confidence and determination, the guide embarked on the journey back to his village. To await. To wait for. Okay. Await is like being in a state of waiting. Gradually, he approached the edge of the forest where his village was located and prepared to face whatever awaited him there. To turn to. Okay, this is like a phrasal verb. To consult someone or something for help, advice, or information. Okay, kids turn to their parents for advice. He didn't know who to turn to, whom to trust with his story. First hand, coming from the original source or personal experience gained or learned directly. Okay, so you were a witness or participated in. Okay, so you were actually there. That is firsthand. After all, he had witnessed the horrors that occurred in the forest firsthand. Saturated. Okay, here this is an adjective. The verb is to saturate. Okay, filled with something so that no more can be added. To saturate or saturated is usually used when talking about water. Saturate the soil so plants can grow. There is saturated fat, and those fats have water in them. Okay, but saturated can be used with many things. For example, US culture is saturated with technology. Sometimes the news is saturated with propaganda. But in the village, the air was saturated with strong smells like chimney smoke, garbage, and the odor of domesticated animals. To glance, to take a brief or hurried look. Okay, so this is to glance at something, is to look at something quickly. As he walked down the main street, the guide noticed that some people recognized him and looked at him with fear, while others glanced at him with confusion. Disheveled, of a person's hair, clothes, or appearance. Untidy, disordered. Okay, so disheveled is kind of like a mess, but in the context of a person's appearance. He wondered if they had already heard about the missing tourists, or if his own disheveled appearance, torn clothes, and wild look made them uncomfortable. Pleasantries. Inconsequential remarks made as a part of polite conversation. Okay, this is like greetings, small talk, things like that. Without wasting time on pleasantries, said, "The police are looking for you and suspect you are responsible for some missing tourists." Questions for Chapter 4. Choose one or more questions to answer in the comments section below. Answer in complete sentences. I will respond with feedback and error correction to the first 50 comments. Number 1. How did the guide feel when he woke up? Number 2. When the guide reached the village, what decision did he struggle with? Number 3. How did the guide's perception of the village change after his time in the forest? Number 4. If you were Alejandro, what would you do? Would you have gone back into the forest? Would you have continued to warn people about the danger in the forest? Who would you try to talk to? What story would you try to tell? Number 5. Write a question the story created for you. Again, this is to practice writing questions. I look forward to your comments. Thank you for visiting English Alien. Click subscribe and get notified for new content.